because one of the podcasts we messed up the recording, and so it took 2 weeks to edit that podcast.
Hello, unengineers. Welcome to the 31st episode of the Unengineered podcast. My name is Atik. I'm here with my co-host actually. We don't have hosts on this podcast, guys. We only have co-hosts. Nobody knows who the host is. But this is my co-host, Advait Vatsod. He must be above me or below me. That sounds wrong. But today we also have another.
Said that.
That's what we today have another very exciting guest, and Advait is going to introduce him a little bit, and then he will introduce himself.
I guess. So this is my friend Akhil Varyani. He actually we have never met in real life. We just met through Instagram.
Yes, I have met
because-
Akhil in real life because I was his friend before you were his friend as well. So.
What? I didn't know that.
Bro, you know he's from a college, right?
I know he was from a college. I thought he was your senior.
Yeah, he was my senior. We met a couple times.
Oh. No, I didn't know that. You
Why would I? Yeah, please continue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So okay, I met Akhil through Instagram, and the reason we started talking was because when we started Unengineered, I think that was the time Botcart was getting started. So Botcart is Akhil's startup too, and it was like, okay, someone is with us. So it was this, okay, we are going through the same problems. We started talking about this. We actually, our very first meet was when we were launching the recipes app, which is so long back that I can't even.
Bro, it's not even a year ago, but it's okay.
Dude, it feels like it's been so long.
I know, right? Yeah.
So we started talking about startups, and I remember our first meet. I think it was me, you, and Kalpesh. So Kalpesh and we started talking about the app, and it was just an amazing meet. Like I remember saying at the end of the meeting, कि record करके podcast की तरह भी डाल देना चाहिए था because there was so much stuff.
That could have been one podcast. Yeah. So I remember the time when we had that chat, Advait and me, and then Kalpesh. So that was pretty fun. Like I knew for a fact that एक बार podcast episode तो होने वाला है. So just a quick intro about me is that like I am from the same college as Atik and Advait from Westside. I graduated in 2020. Then moved on to actually work at Quantify. And now I'm actually switched to a company called Zeta. And yes, as Advait mentioned, like I have my own startup. Actually वो नाम थोड़ा सा अब लोगों को पता है Botcart है, but it's kind of slightly different. Right now what we are
right?
Adalin Labs, yeah. So that's what I'm working on right now on the side. So yeah, like just juggling my job and my startup while I'm at home.
Typical Mumbaikar graduate.
Okay, he's one of those people who I think works very hard. I haven't seen him work, I don't know, but you upload your Google Calendar to screenshots at the end of the month.
That is because that started with Kalpesh, so I'm chipping in here. I'm crediting that behavior to him.
But yeah, I used to look at that calendar and I'm like, oh my god, these guys are really busy. And that was before you got the normal job, like Quantify and Zeta wala. I think.
No wonder Advait wants us to add all the events to Google Calendar. He wants to start doing that as well.
Okay, that is a very different thing.
You were saying, Akhil, you were saying something.
No. I was just saying that, yeah, I mean, that entire Google Calendar thing started as Advait was saying, कि before even I joined, like I started actually working. And that the reason was that उस time पे ना हम लोग इतने लोगों से बात कर रहे थे, like, you know, talking to a lot of people, like seniors, juniors, सब लोग, just to get a gist of our, you know, the space that we were trying to go into. Like, so बहुत चला था, and that's the reason we used to have a lot of calls, you know, lined up day after day.
Talking to people, figuring out the market, I guess.
Exactly, just trying to understand, like, so we were actually trying to build something in the e-commerce space. So just trying to understand, okay, if someone has worked in the e-commerce space before, or someone has their own small e-commerce store, what are the challenges that they face and stuff like that. So that's the reason. I mean, that's the time where we were just talking to so many different people. So yeah, that's the reason.
You guys network pretty well. Like I know that for a fact because almost everybody knows you guys at least अपने जो small startup ecosystem, like the people I know who are in tech and stuff. And yeah, so you guys are pretty good at networking. That is one of the things that I've learned from you because my circle is just the people at Unengineered. It doesn't go that outside. This podcast is one of the ways to do that.
Yeah.
You will get to know people and you can create content out there. But yeah, that is one thing which is like
correct.
A+.
And I really appreciate the fact that you brought up like talking to people, because that is such an important step of like building any sort of product, right? You figure out what the people
Yeah.
want, because a lot of time people are like, oh, I'll just make this app and people will like it, but
Correct.
you don't know if people will like it.
Yeah, that's the engineer's mindset, right? Like, हम engineers हैं, हमें बस बनाना है. We just want to build stuff. We don't know, okay, do people really want?
Selling का part वो business वाले देख लेंगे भाई.
Exactly. So that's a skill set. That's the Advait के साथ we've chatted a lot about this. Like, that's very much like if someone wants to start up and you know coming from an engineering or a STEM background, that's the number one skill I would say. Just learn how to talk to people and learn how to sell your ideas, sell yourself.
Yeah, man, because
So
communication takes a hit if
a
you're in if you're in engineering. I mean,
Yeah.
not for everybody. Obviously, I don't mean to generalize, but
yeah,
to a large part, it really does. It boxes you. I'm not saying engineering boxes you in, but there's a very limited, what do you call it, practical knowledge that you get apart from
Correct.
like industry visits. That is like the most you're getting out of when it comes
Yeah.
to real.
Doing engineering online, I don't even have IVs. Don't tell me
Oh
about
my God.
everything.
yeah, that's so true. I agree with Atik. I mean,
If you're comparing it to other industries, for example, architecture or lawyer,
Yeah.
all of them have it's part of the curriculum that doctors intern in their final year at a proper college or whatever they're at a proper hospital. Usually, colleges are affiliated or inside hospitals. Like
Correct.
Cooper Hospital has their own college.
Yeah.
And the students intern at Cooper Hospital for like the final year, and then law people, they intern at law firms and political parties for a few months. Same goes with architecture. I have a friend who is sort of assisting this professional architect, and she goes around with him, and we get on real
Yeah.
life experience, right? On-site experience. That doesn't
Yeah.
It's not part of our curriculum. Engineering में नहीं
Totally.
होता है वैसे.
That's
So
true.
all we're doing is calculating factorials, code linking. I have no clue how that.
And integrals and
Oh my God.
Oh my
I know,
God.
right? So that's where I feel we're very limited, and these skills we need to pick up on our own throughout our 4 years of college.
soft skills. Even the engineering part, right? The course itself is not. That's what Atik was saying. In architecture, where you go with a architect person who's already been there. So West, it's very rare to see that in an engineering college. Like you going out with someone who's actually built an app or built up.
Wait.
So it's बहुत rarely
Correct,
होता.
that's
The
correct.
tech is outdated, na? The syllabus, tech, everything is so
Yeah,
outdated.
I agree.
Or I can't begin there. Let's not shut down college.
Yeah. Let's not.
No, I really don't
Because-
want to do that.
Anyway, so let's move on to Zeta and stuff. Do you want to start with Zeta or what way you want to take?
I think
Whatever.
I want to start with vodka. Let's go with vodka.
The thing with Botcard, right? Like it was never a thing that I would want to start up in college. Right? Like after second or third year, I was just the only thing was like, अच्छा job लेना, थोड़ा बहुत experience लेके I'll go do an MS and go in the US.
MBA,
Like
yeah,
everyone's doing,
correct.
right? And just go out of India. That's what everyone's perception is. But then after like I got my placement right in Quantify, I like had a entire year. I think Atik, you might also have had this entire year right now, which I think you've completed. So that 1 year that you get right in your final year, if you've got placed much earlier, then that's very liberating because you don't have the pressure of attendance as such. इतना नहीं होता. And then you chill kind of. So I try to explore a lot, and then that's where I kind of met a lot of people. Both, I mean, in college to come tha, but even outside, like via Instagram, via my school friends, I met people who were actually working on their own stuff. That's where I kind of got थोड़ा inspired कि यार कुछ करना, खुद से करते हैं, let's start up something, let's build something.
Correct.
So then eventually, like I was kind of lucky enough to meet my co-founder. I think काफी बार नाम आएगा उसका इस podcast में. His name is Kalpesh.
Podcast with him also.
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So I met Kalpesh, my co-founder. He actually, I met him on Instagram, as in we were just talking about startups, and randomly it happened. And the thing was that he's from my school, right? He's from the same year, like same school, but we never interacted in school. Like he was in a completely different batch. Okay. So that's where we kind of had mutual friends and we started talking, and then we started going on to networking events and stuff, and we realized कि यार हम दोनों को थोड़ा कुछ passion है, let's start up something. And then I had good enough time in my final semester, and then eventually लॉकडाउन हो गया तो और टाइम था.
बहुत time था, seriously.
So it was great time to just I had a lot of time, frankly.
Correct.
Even like I think my placement, I think at Quantify, it just kind of got, I think, delayed thoda sa. So we just tried to
all the placements did, yeah.
so we just tried to brainstorm a few ideas, and we came up with Botcart, where Botcart was something related to e-commerce. Like we wanted to basically improve, so when you look at a lot of small to medium brands on e-commerce, I'm not talking about Amazon or Flipkart, but the smaller brands, smaller D2C brands,
Correct.
I mean, a lot of the times people just came onto the page and just dropped off. Like they never knew, the businesses never knew ki yaar, why are these people dropping off, or why are the
Correct,
carts
correct.
being abandoned. So we wanted to build like a solution for them, trying to understand user behavior. Okay, like kya problem ho sakta hai, whether it's a
Right.
payment problem or whether it's some issue with what they're not able to find, something like that.
Hmm.
So वो सब research चल रहा था, we were talking to a lot of people, but eventually after we did make like an MVP, like a basic, we started with building like a simple live chat. But then it just kind of fizzled out because we realized that there were a lot of solutions similar to this I mean, if you look in the US, okay, but in India now, the market was like, especially with these small businesses, they were not willing to pay for SaaS products. Like they were not
Correct,
willing to
correct.
pay for like a live chat or some software.
Is it because
So-
they did not see the value of it?
Possibly, I mean, we were also not very mature with the product. It was like a very shitty version. But yes,
Yeah.
I feel like they were not ready for adopting that kind of a solution. They were like, हम basic Google Analytics कर रहे हैं, this is working for us and all, like. So that SaaS market in India now, it's still not penetrated enough.
It's not,
to-
definitely. And
so-
that's very surprising because
Hmm.
have you heard of Zoho?
Of course. So
Yeah.
big fan.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been following them up on the news, and
Yeah.
I'd never heard of them until they appeared on like the on the newsletter that I get. It's called Filter Coffee.
Oh,
And-
अच्छा.
Oh wait, is
हाँ.
this
Yeah.
Zoho Books or something?
It's like Adobe but for businesses. E-commerce, helping online websites, selling stuff, all of that.
Achha,
Right?
okay.
They do also have like things like CRMs and matlab, HR
Yeah.
management software, payroll software.
Basically,
Yeah.
software as a service is there.
Yeah, but basically you can
Absolutely.
understand it as like किसी भी business को, if they need some basic software, let's say to manage their payroll, manage their employee data,
Right.
employees का profile and all of that, तो उसका एक one suite solution है, like everything in one place.
Oh.
You can integrate your email with that, G Suite with that, all of it. So
And I'd surprisingly never heard of them until they appeared on my newsletter with a huge like valuation or some kind of raise, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
where have these guys come from?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had never heard of them. Wow.
correct. Yeah, because
I think, is it as a orange color ka icon or something?
I have no clue what the icon looks like, man.
Because
think-
I remember, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but
Yeah.
the invoice software that we use at Unengineered Invoicing wala,
correct.
called, so they stopped taking clients India वगैरह से, so they're
Oh my
taking only
God.
clients USA. So luckily I created an account before that happened, so we are still able to generate invoices, but you can't create an account if you're not living in US. And
Oh,
they
damn.
had this ye ki you can use Zoho Books for invoicing and stuff. So I think
Yeah,
it's
that
better
is
to
most
Zoho
probably
Books
it.
was one
That's
of them.
most
Yeah.
probably it.
Correct. They even have that accounting and invoicing.
So मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ ना कि you bring up the penetration is so low and yet these guys are valued so much, maybe because they don't have competition.
Yeah, so these are Zohos, and there's another company called Freshworks, if you've heard. These are very few anomalies, if you want to, like very rare. Very rare. Abhi things are getting better, like in SaaS. Like, so for example, the company that I work right now at Zeta, they're also a proper B2B SaaS company.
Correct.
So a lot of companies are coming up now because of that funding thing that's going on in India.
Yeah.
But हाँ, मतलब starting में if you look at it, there were very few. Zoho था, Freshworks था.
Absolutely. Very
I'm talking about companies who started in India and then became global. Like Zoho is a global company.
It is.
Freshworks is global now. They are in a lot of countries, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's slowly picking up. It'll take thoda time in India.
Whatcart is bootstrap, right?
Correct.
You want me to
So
say,
हाँ.
refer to it as Adalin Labs की Botcart.
So Botcart, so then that's how it fizzled out, na? The idea, because we were not fully sure if this would work out. And then the other thing was that to build a SaaS product, eventually, I mean, you need some capital, right? And you either go and approach some accelerator or some let's say a VC fund or whatever, or I mean you can try to bootstrap some money, which if you can get some other business going for you, or with that same business, which is very difficult. So what we thought that right now, like at that point, we did not want to go to investors to approach, and because one thing was like all of us, especially in the core team, we were all working full time, and we were not ready to at that point not ready to go full time, because if you go to an investor and even if you get selected, okay, I mean if you're actually not fully committed to the idea, they'll never put your money
They
into it.
need you full time on it. That's true.
Absolutely. So that was one. So, and the other thing was we wanted to try to bootstrap because we wanted to get our skin in the game. Basically, try to understand how business works, how to talk to clients, how to actually make a deal, and things like that. So that's what we wanted to experience ourselves. So we thought of starting a different kind of a business, which is a much simpler business to do, like a services agency, wherein you build like we had some basic experience and some basic knowledge of building apps, or for example, my co-founders, two of them are from the sales and business side, so they try to take up some sales projects also, like generating leads for clients, or following up with them, email marketing, things like that. So all of that, I mean, initially it was tough to get clients because we're all new, we're all young. But once we got a couple of them, then we started pushing to get more and more. So that's where we started to get some cash flow, bootstrap some money. And the thing is, whatever we could actually say for ourselves, okay, I mean, of course you have to sustain your people, right? So you have to pay them. But the remaining part, the thing that you can sustain, you can actually use it to build your product on the side. So whether it was Botcart, right now it's not Botcart, it's on something else. But yeah, the idea is same, bootstrap some money from somewhere else as an agency, which is what is Adalin Labs right now, and then use that to build a product on the side.
So okay, you guys are completely changing the product, like okay.
We want to, of course, because services is not scalable, right? Like the biggest thing in services is like if you have an agency, first of all, there's a lot of competition. Especially if you are in that very generic space of building apps or advertising or marketing, whatever. So then the only scale that you can do is basically human resource. Like you need a lot of people, and you need to manage a lot of people in different projects. Whereas in a product, it's very lean. Like once your product can scale, I mean, it can scale exponentially even with a small amount of people. Look at Clubhouse. I think there are.
Seriously, they had 4 people when they launched.
Yeah. I mean, that's the power of scaling products. So that's the reason.
Hey, my question was, are you changing the Botcart to product?
Yeah, sure. So right now we're not looking to build like that on that idea, which I was talking about on e-commerce. And because people used to follow us, you guys used to follow us. I think Botcart का name वो काफी popular हो
गया.
But it's the website is no longer there. If you know. We're actually building on another idea for open source. So I'm not sure. I mean, Advait, I think you might have an idea. I think I'm not sure if you know what open source is. I can elaborate if you want.
One of our queries. You can go ahead and talk about open source.
Sure.
Yeah, you can.
So in a simple way, right? Like if you look at most of these enterprise applications today, right? Most of the big ones, right? Like for example, let's take an example of Zoho itself, right? Zoho is such a big enterprise today, but all of their source code is like fully closed, right? It's proprietary, which means that nobody can just, it's not public, nobody can just go there and make a copy of it and make something out of it. But if you take, let's say, an example of, let's say, Chrome, right? The browser that you use today. Chrome was actually not built directly by Google itself. If I mean, there was another project called Chromium. If you've heard of Chromium, Chromium is an open source project, which means that their code is available on GitHub, which means anyone can go there and see their code. They can just clone it, copy it, and make another version of it. So what Google decided, they love this project, and they put their engineers to take Chromium and build some features on top of it, like make it much more secure, make it much more better. And that's how Chrome began. If you've heard of Brave browser, has anyone heard?
No, I have not.
Achha. Well, Brave browser is getting pretty popular because of its privacy thing and ad blockers and stuff. And even that was built from Chromium. and that was an open
Even
source project.
the new Microsoft Edge that is built on Chromium.
Correct,
So if they
correct.
use Chromium as a base, then they add some features
Hmm.
that are only available to their browser,
Correct,
and then
correct.
they release the product. So some
Correct.
part of Chrome is openly
From
available
Chrome.
everywhere. I'm talking about
Yeah.
Chrome, not Chromium.
Yeah.
Chromium full on available at GitHub.
So
Yeah,
it's
GitHub
like
maybe.
it's like you consider like a cake wherein you the base of it is already ready and you just have to put some toppings on top of it.
And the
on top.
toppings सब लोग अपने अपने हिसाब से डालते हैं.
हाँ,
Yeah,
creative हो
correct,
सकता है,
correct.
right? So it gives you that platform too. So the this is the power of open source, and the second power of open source is that anyone can contribute to the project, right? From
True,
anywhere in the world, because it's open source. You just have to go there on the GitHub page. You need to figure out what issues are there, where can I contribute. There are a lot of communities also, like in open source. Like let's say if it's a big project like Chromium, for example, there are a lot of Slack channels, a lot of Discord channels. You can go interact. So just like you have founders in companies, in startups, you have maintainers in open source projects, similar to founders. So these people are maintaining that entire project. So this was just like a gist about open source, how it works. But then there are a lot of problems that we figured out in open source. So that's where our idea comes in next. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
But okay, your guys' plan is creating something open source or taking something open source word, we're adding your toppings to it and releasing it.
No. So what we want to do, we don't want to necessarily become an open source company. But what we want to do is help these open source organizations with basically. So what happens is so many open source projects lie there today, especially a lot of SaaS products are coming out. But the problem is they're not, their founders are mostly tech people again. So, and most of the contributors are just coders, right? So they don't know how to market it, how to sell it, how to scale it. And that's where like there's a huge gap between where the product is built and where the market is. So what we want to do is help them help them get discovered by businesses. So today when businesses are a lot of businesses are you can say they're apprehensive of using open source products. Okay, so let's say take an example. So have you guys heard of Drift by any chance? It's a chatbot tool or a live chat tool. It's just like a chatbot that you interact. Okay, it's a company and anyone can. I mean, if you can afford it, I mean, of course you can buy it and use it. But the point is, it's very expensive. Okay, so a lot of small businesses who want to use it, they can't just go and buy a Drift enterprise version. It's too costly for them. So there are a lot of open source projects out there which are very similar to Drift. Okay, they're fully free. You can just take a clone of it, and just use it. But the problem is they don't know how to make revenue beyond a certain point. Like they'll have an open source version, then they will have an enterprise version which they'll price it to a certain amount. But beyond that, I mean, it's very difficult to get to that scale of a Drift or of a Chrome, things like
So
that.
Drift का code is open source?
किसका code?
Drift का.
नहीं, Drift नहीं है. Drift is an enterprise. हाँ.
अच्छा, okay, उसके competitor.
Let's take another example. Slack तो सुना होगा, right? Slack. Of course. Slack is awesome, right? It's an enterprise tool used by so many companies. But there is another open source tool to Slack called Mattermost, if you've heard. Mattermost is very similar to Slack, okay, but fully open source. Like you don't have to, like for Slack you have to obviously pay for those additional features, right? But for Mattermost, Mattermost already has a lot of other features inbuilt, and if you can build it on your, you can host it yourself. Okay, like if you understand how to do that, then you can just take that open source version and use that with much better features also. A lot of these products have a lot more features also sometimes than their actual enterprise. But it's just that people don't, they're apprehensive about security concerns. What is it? Why is it open source? Things like that. Like there's a lot of problems, gaps in between that we want to solve.
But that's kind of the forte of open source, right? It's much more secure than closed source code because anyone can have a look at it and point out the mistakes and fix them, right?
Exactly. Matlab, it's much faster, na? Like if someone reports a bug, it could be any developer sitting in any remote part of the country. They could actually even work on that bug if they know how to code in that language and stuff like that.
So that is like one of the advantages of the open source world field.
Yeah.
It's much more secure than it. And that is why I think Chromium is a big project and a lot of companies derive from that. Chromium is a base of I think Firefox is the only browser I can come up with that is not Chromium based.
Correct, yeah.
Baki
Oh, damn,
everything
really?
is Chromium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And I think
crazy.
Safari is not Chromium based,
Oh,
obviously.
shit. Yeah,
So,
obviously.
but
Mozilla. Yeah.
Apple wants nothing to do with Chromium, man, or open source.
there are some pros and cons to that because if someone finds a security vulnerability Chromium mein, like a major wala,
Hmm.
all the browsers are affected at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Sath mein. So
Huh,
they can
that's
take
true.
advantage of it.
That's
So
true.
there are some pros and cons to that.
Oh right.
Correct.
So I guess companies which have capital and resource will prefer to make their own sort of like whatever software in order to avoid
Yeah.
this problem.
Correct.
guessing.
So there are a lot of open source projects which are funded also. They are sponsored also.
Oh, that's nice.
But it's very rare again. It's very, very rare because it has taken, let's say, I'm not sure if you've heard of Jenkins. So it's like a huge tool, huge open source tool. But
Yeah.
it's taken like a lot of years for them to eventually reach to this stage where they're acquired by like a big company, or they don't have that financial issue right now because they're either sponsored by big companies because a lot of companies love them. They love their
That's
product.
nice. That's great.
And yeah, and then they're eventually acquired by another big company called Cloudbeast. So it's very rare that such things happen in
Yeah,
the
because I'm guessing the risk is so high and
So high.
the market is very reluctant for these products.
totally
I guess Jenkins has to be really good at what they're doing. So
totally they have a strong, so one part of becoming really good at open source is community, right? Like you have to have
I was actually, I don't like to bring this word into this conversation, but it sounds like a decentralized software.
Yeah, I actually tweeted about something recently. I think Advait will like, yeah. Thanks Advait for liking all my tweets. You are the biggest cheerleader of all my tweets. But anyways, okay. So what was that about? I was trying to explain what open source is in like using another analogy. It was like, it's not the perfect analogy, but think of like writing a novel, except that there's no one single author of that novel.
Oh yeah.
So there are a lot of chapters, lot of people contributing to different chapters and then making that book. But again, it has to be in sync. Like the story has to be in sync. So there are maintainers.
Maintainers are the editors. Or something.
Yeah,
Nice.
something similar to
Hey,
that.
that's a great analogy. What are you talking about?
But ऐसा होता नहीं है ना books में.
Wait till you work on a book.
Hypothetical.
Then you'll know.
Fair enough.
It's
Yeah,
that
but
decentralization that you're talking about. That's true.
that's
to an extent.
exactly what open source
But
sounds
okay,
like.
it's not exactly decentralized. It
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
multiple contributors. So that decentralized, but it doesn't need a central.
Correct.
Plus, it does need a central place though. Yeah,
It does,
it's
it
not
does, yeah.
technically it's not decentralized per se like
Yes,
blockchain or
100%.
something. But yeah.
But I'm guessing Jenkins has a great community, as you mentioned.
Yes. Communities
Yeah.
are very important in open source.
So
Because
when you say acquired, who gets to keep the capital and stuff? Like, do the maintainers get it, or does every person who has contributed ever get a part of it? Like, I don't follow how do you
that's
get acquired.
yeah, that's a good question. Even I'm not too aware about that, but mostly it should be the maintainers because it depends on who has those who is signing the contract for those shares and stuff. But generally, because there's no real founder in an open source project, these are your maintainers only.
Correct.
Okay. But I mean, if it's a SaaS product, if it's like, let's say, a live chat product which has gone open source, then it'll have founders. So then those founders have your typical like share agreements and all of that when they get acquired.
Okay.
But if it's like an open source project, okay, which is not like a company. For example, Chromium is not a company, right?
It's not, yeah.
It's just a project which is now, I mean, it was built by someone and it's popular and it's being used by companies like Google and stuff. So there, I don't know what the process is, but if it's a company, just let's say Mattermost, I think it's a company if I'm not wrong, then it's just the same procedure as a
For
company.
regular acquisition, yeah.
Yeah. That's how it is, I think.
Diverting from that topic a bit, now that you're talking about open source and stuff, what are some golden rules on building and maintaining a startup team? Because okay, you guys operate a team of like 10 people, if I'm not wrong.
What was the maximum team size of whatever?
We had at some point we had around about 22 people at the start.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Fine, good.
Yeah, that's there. But
so I'm guessing who so you got a team of 4 together and then you scaled from that, right? So
Yes.
how did you navigate that?
This will sound funny, but most of it was social media, mostly
Yeah,
Instagram.
no,
Because-
doesn't sound
It
funny
actually
at all.
doesn't,
Because, yeah.
we hired
2020,
Adalin.
man.
Yeah, because at the start, you first of all just out of college, like we didn't know how to hire, how to do stuff.
Correct.
I had just given an interview myself, so the best thing was try to like build a chota audience. Okay, just like
Uh-huh.
you do on Instagram or whatever. Post a lot. I used to post a lot of content about startups, about in general stuff. What
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
what I'm
stories
thinking
where I
about.
remember.
So उसके वजह से like there are a lot of people asking, okay, what is it about, what the startup is about, and things like that. Same happened not just with me, with my co-founders. Like initially it was only Kalpesh and me, so when he used to post a lot, and then it was mostly from our circle, from college, from school, those
Correct.
people who reached out to us, and then we tried to collaborate in some sense because they loved the idea, they loved what we're trying to do.
Correct.
That's how it was. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then slowly later on, I mean, we did hire like thoda sa directly also. Like we didn't know those people, so we went on a platform. We put out like a job description for few, but that was, I think, we just had 2 or 3 folks like that. Most of them were like from our acquaintances or network, things like that.
Okay.
So
And
that's it.
freelancers, if I'm not wrong.
Not freelancers, you would say, but we were mostly working part time. Like it was like a part time project for us. So the way they used to get compensated was based on like once Adalin started, right? Before Adalin, we were just building a product. We had no revenue or anything. But once Adalin started, we started getting projects. So people started getting paid based on the work they were doing in that project. It was purely on a contract project basis.
Correct.
Okay. So that's how it was. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are working on a product. So can you go more into the product building process, like podcast? Because you had I don't know, I just saw it stories where you guys had boards full of stuff that's to be done, and so can you go more into product building since you guys worked on client projects and then your own podcast project also? How did you guys manage them? What tech did you use? Like this is more of a question ki this software use this to this GitHub for code, and you guys were using React, I think, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so tech to yaar, matlab, for me, you could just use any tech as long as it serves your purpose. The approach of product building for me is like first get to understand the problem statement much better. Okay, focus on the problem more than the solution.
Correct.
Because because once you really understand that problem, then solutions come they come much faster. But a lot of us just you don't fully understand the problem space कि कितना scope है कितना scope नहीं है. Are we trying to actually focus on that, or trying to go beyond that? A lot of people, because in the initial part, what I feel is you just have to be a bit more focused. Like you can't be like, okay, अब मैं ये भी कर रहा हूँ, अब I'll do something like I'll basically I'm doing something in e-commerce, but I also sell some fintech product, or I'll sell some insurance, I'll sell this also, that also. Like a lot of people do that just to try to make their product a bit more unique, but it takes time. Like you initially have to start with one mode and then slowly
I agree with that so
Yeah.
much. I agree with that so hard.
so that's one. Second thing is, I mean, just be very customer obsessed. Like just try to talk to as many if you think it's a potential customer or someone working in that industry, try to talk to them to understand if that problem is a real problem, if it's really big enough, right?
Correct.
So product building for me, it's even before you like write a line of code, there's a lot of research that I personally like to do. Yeah. So once that is clear, then you at least have an idea. Okay, sometimes you do realize, okay, that problem wasn't that big of a problem. I was just thinking about it. It was from my side, I thought, okay, it's a huge problem, but for people, they wouldn't pay for it, right? They'd be like, okay, chal raha to chal raha. So that's how it is. Like figure out that. I love that Delta 4 theory. Have you? I think.
Not all.
So there's this famous entrepreneur that I keep quoting, Kunal Shah.
Go ahead.
So he talks about this Delta 4 theory, right? That there has to be a huge shift in user behavior, right? When you're trying to build a product. So he gives a good example of train tickets, let's say. Like initially you just go to the platform and buy a ticket, right? Even if it's like a long distance train, but now you can just do it online.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So that behavior is almost irreversible, right? If you can do that, even for Olas and Ubers, your taxis, you're not once you get used to an Uber and Ola, you're not never
You
gonna
can't
come.
go back. Oh
Yeah.
damn, yeah.
So
That's a good one.
that irreversible change, and there are a few other points that I can't fully recollect, but he talks about this three to four points. If you can check those points, then it becomes like a delta for product, because
Samjha.
that's a huge problem. That will just change the behavior of users. It's tough.
Right.
It's tough to do that research, but like that's a good starting point.
Obviously.
Because I can't remember the last time I tried ordering without Swiggy and so.
मैं वही बोलना मैं वही mention
Correct.
करना वाला था कि that's how they also, because initially the behavior was before Swiggy and Zomato was we call up the restaurant directly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You'll have to call up this restaurant. If they don't have it, they call another restaurant.
Absolutely. वही होता है. But now nobody does that, right?
Nobody does, except sometimes the mom tells me to call the restaurant because
Yeah.
they'll deliver cheaply.
Correct.
That's the one
That's
time.
an exception.
And then I
Okay, I
use Swiggy and
remember-
Zomato only as virtual menus. So sorry,
हाँ,
sorry.
and I remember Domino's के साथ पहले order करते because I used to order Domino's. I had to call them and tell them कि ये पैसा चाहिए, ये पैसा
Correct.
चाहिए.
Correct.
It
हाँ.
was such a hassle telling them my address every time. And
Yeah.
True.
so I'm very thankful. Although, come on, bro, sort of delivery charges come. It's a bit much.
Seriously, the delivery charges are insane. But then that's the thing, right? Once you change their behavior, you have them in the palm of your hand.
हाँ, exactly.
They're not gonna go back now.
Yeah. But once you do all of this research, then at the end of the day, because I am someone who kind of gets stuck sometimes in analysis paralysis. So that's where my co-founder helps me to tell me, hey, listen, bro, बहुत हो गया research. Now actually let's take some action, right?
करते हैं अभी.
So this is a very famous tool in the startup world called an MVP, which is like a minimum viable product.
product.
So it's like a very basic version of your product or your idea, which need not have all the features, but just that one thing which will attract your initial customers.
Your
Or-
USP.
Yeah, your USP, right? So that is like a very basic version. So you start with that, then you start obviously designing, visualizing the product, and then eventually once those designs, I to even prefer that if you just have the designs, you just again take those designs to your customers or people you're talking to. Only if that is validated, if you get that feedback, then you actually start coding and actually start building the app or the product. So a lot of the people will just
Market research is really important.
very a lot of people will just start coding
Start
first
coding,
and and then
Because
after
I mean, I don't blame them. That's what they've been taught, right? Start coding.
no, of course, even
And
I mean,
I'm kind of the person he's talking about because I get super duper excited. Like I'll go on Figma, I'll draw
Oh,
stuff,
God.
and I'll spend just hours looking at just one screen. Like I want the corner should be correctly rounded and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's good for a personal projects, but if you're like trying to build up startup,
Mhm.
right, which has then you might just waste your 6 months of time coding and then realizing अरे इसको कोई use नहीं करने वाला if you have not researched it.
Absolutely.
So that's what the process.
It's like you're almost building a part of the product before starting to code. It's almost like that.
Correct. And there are so many tools to do that today. You can just design a prototype in, I think, Figma or Canva and all of
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
You can just do that. You can do there are a lot of no code tools also. If you want to build just a landing page. So I also love this idea of just building a very basic landing page. That can be done in Webflow, or it's a very cheap tool. Like you can just
Yeah.
take a monthly plan, build that one.
Webflow is insane, by the way.
Insane,
I've checked it out. It's insane.
It's an amazing tool.
It's
So you just build that
amazing.
landing page, and if it's a B2C tool, then generally you want your regular customers to come visit that page. So then you can just actually use Facebook ads, Instagram ads to do a bit of A/B testing, trying to push your ad, just see how people
Yeah.
respond.
We were gonna do that beach mein. I think this is a
हाँ.
DevOps Engineer tip. And we were
अच्छा.
really high.
No,
We were really high
I think
on
it's. I remember this. It was in one of the courses I took of Uncle Wariku ka.
अच्छा, अंकुर का था क्या?
अंकुर का था, मैंने भी वहाँ से I think
It's a
देखा था.
fake
Because
landing page and yeah.
okay, yeah. Because I have heard Sisinti say the same thing. So that's.
I mean, it's a
good.
very common technique.
Yeah,
It is a
yeah.
very common technique, and it's so effective. It sounds like really good in my.
Yeah, it's effective. It's cheap. It's very cheap also. Like you can just validate your idea today.
It's like you're testing the water.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Damn good.
So yeah, I would just say
Great
that.
idea.
Yeah, so that is how you build product. Yes, you do your market research and then you go to coding. Although don't get stuck in analysis
Market
paralysis. That is the new term which I learned is I'm going to use this
हाँ.
every day, I guess. But okay, coming to
होता है.
this coming to your actual name, the thing that you do daily,
Yeah,
Zeta.
Zeta.
So
Ha,
first
ha.
of all, I want to congratulate you, specific. I don't know you as your company becoming a unicorn recently.
Let's go.
You're part of the
Yes.
wave, and you're part
Yeah.
of the reason India ka startup economy is glowing. But okay,
Mm.
you work in the CI/CD department, right? If continuous integration and continuous delivery, wala.
Okay, huh. So that's just one part of like the role. Okay. So my role is of a DevOps engineer, so which is like a very new, very interestingly new concept in India at least. In US, a lot of startups have gotten to that scale where they had this role earlier, but in India, it's kind of taking that shape now. So CI/CD, as you mentioned, Advait, is just one part of DevOps.
Okay.
There's a lot of parts to DevOps, and I kind of again stumbled upon this because that's the work that I was doing at my previous company, like from where I got placed Quantify. I got placed at Quantify from college. It was very similar, and then I kind of explored that, and then eventually got a chance to move into core DevOps. Now the role at DevOps is like basically it's less related to development of the app or of the like you're not actually writing the app's code or the
You are
logic
getting
of the
your hands
code.
dirty.
Yeah, you are getting your hands dirty, but not on the application itself.
Application end.
Like you're not building the front end or the back end, but you're actually more on the operation side. You are getting your hands dirty, but on building systems that will make things much faster,
Oh,
much scalable
got
for
it,
other
got it,
developers.
got it.
So CI/CD is one of them. So let's say you build an app and then you want to scale it to so many millions and millions of users. And at the same time, you also want to roll out features in 15 days or bug fixes in 15 days.
Yeah.
But you want to, obviously, you don't want these apps to go down. So how
Yeah.
this entire process of making things much smoother, okay, when it comes to deployment of an app or fixing bugs and stuff like that, that is the core part of DevOps. It's more on the scalability side and system design side of things.
If you can you go into the bit of your brief introduction? Zeta hai kya? And okay, it's a payment solution, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of that. From what I have gathered is that right now they're just focusing on banking tech and payments, right? So
Okay.
if you look at today's banking software, I'm pretty sure, I mean, if you compare it with a Swiggy or Zomato or your traditional apps that you use,
So
it's terrible,
I
right?
use Yono and it doesn't work most of the time.
Uh-huh. What's that app?
Yono, it's
Yono, I think
SBI's banking
SBI
app.
ka.
Acha, SBI ka. Okay,
SBI.
huh.
And it's
So,
not fun.
it's bad. It's bad. The experiences are not as good as today's modern apps, right?
Seriously, dude.
Yeah.
So that's what Zeta wants to change apparently, and they're looking to and it's not just the app, like not just the app that you use on the phone, it's the actual software behind that app, like your debit processing, your credit card processing,
Correct.
your all sorts of things related to banking, and they want to add a lot of smart features to it. Let's say
That's nice.
you want to add some smart controls to your, let's say, a card. Okay, let's say if you guys, I think you might have heard of FamPay.
I have.
Yeah, it's a kind of a neobank for teenagers, right? So Zeta is actually, I mean, FamPay is one of our clients.
Oh,
So yeah,
that's
so
nice.
Zeta is actually, so their KYC and their entire credit card part is actually managed by Zeta. So
wow.
basically all those card controls that you can do, right? Let's say you don't want someone to purchase beyond a certain limit at a
Correct,
certain location, right?
Correct.
Which is very important.
When you're giving cards to teenagers, yeah.
Yeah. So those kind of smart stuff and all of
Smart,
that.
that's very
So
smart,
the
yeah.
kind of building those kind of innovative solutions in banking and payments, and their philosophy is like to make these payments almost like invisible. It's like you don't want to get up getting frustrated about making a payment, right? Like
Correct, yeah.
most of the time, like I'm pretty frustrated if I have to make a payment today, if I have to pay my bill or do this and that,
Yeah.
unless it's a recurring thing happening. But like otherwise, it kind of gets very frustrating.
It's
So
very annoying, yeah.
so they want to just, their whole mission and vision is to make it as smooth and invisible as possible. So that's what Zeta is doing right now. But yeah. But something they were doing something before 2018 or 2017. I'm not sure. They had pivoted to something.
Old
Before.
company. Okay, pretty old as in two. It's been 4 years or something.
Sorry.
Something.
How
I
old
thought
is
the company was pretty new. I thought it was 1 year old or something.
Which one?
Zeta.
No. It's the company.
Bro, एक साल में कैसे unicorn? Except if you're in India at least. I mean.
No. The thing is, the founder is a serial entrepreneur. I think he has
Yeah.
had startups पहले भी. So it is
Yeah.
once you are in the
हो सकता है.
game, it's
हाँ तो
pretty
फिर
easy
ठीक
to
है.
raise
हो
that
funding.
सकता
makes
है.
video, but
लाइक क्रेड का फाउंडर कुणाल को तो मिल गया था.
हाँ.
एक साल में मिल गया था ना, आई थिंक.
हाँ.
फंडिंग इतना बड़ा. बट
So that is what I thought.
Zeta has been around, I think, since 6 years, 2015. if I'm not wrong.
That's nice.
They've been doing
Even
this
I
for a
think
long time.
Zoho has been around for a very long time, right?
Very long time. They were one of the first few.
First ever, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I was so
First
surprised.
was
Like, how have these guys slipped under my radar for so long? What are these
Yeah.
guys doing?
These are mostly B2B companies, right?
Yeah,
Not-
big companies,
so-
right?
So yeah, there's no wonder I didn't hear about them, but still, like, their numbers are insane. So I'm like,
Insane.
okay.
Massive. I've heard Zoho's founder, right? He's a South Indian guy, and
Yeah, it's South Indian guy.
he has opened up an office in his own local village hometown
Oh,
for
wow.
himself, because he
Hmm.
loves to kind of live away from the city and have fun in the nature and stuff.
I like
That's
this
great.
guy. I like this guy.
Like इतना freedom है life में अब तो जो करना है करो.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, crazy story.
That's
Zoho's
pretty cool, dude. Seriously,
That's-
you need to read about Zoho if you haven't done it. It's very fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing I'm gonna do after I'm done with this podcast.
Cool.
But
What
huh,
else?
I'm so done with all the
Yeah, I'm
questions.
pretty much done as well. We're also almost out of time. But I'm really
So
glad
So
to
कितना हुआ recording time? क्योंकि मेरे इधर तो काफी इधर.
53. On my clock is 53.
Okay, so
Oh.
I think we're gonna have to do the outro now.
Yeah, we'll do the outro. Is there something you want to expand on, Akhil? We have time for that.
Actually, we have like for 10 minutes.
Well, nothing much, yeah. Like, if I had to say, I would just urge like all of the engineers at least from my college, definitely like try to explore something outside of your regular curriculum domain. Like, there's a ton of opportunities today in the startup world, or even in, let's say, if you want to do something in the content space, or just try to actually go out there. The more you talk to people, the more you actually basically your perspectives broaden and widen. So a lot of people especially I've seen in engineering colleges, even I was like that in my first couple of years, right? They're just very stuck in their own bubble. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude.
So very
Don't
stuck.
get me started on this.
So yeah, I would just tell them, yeah, just be like Advait and Atik.
I wouldn't
That
get-
is the
yeah.
biggest compliment I have received.
No, that's fair,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Because oh my god, engineering colleges are one hell of a closed environment.
It is
One
closed.
hell of a closed environment. It's insane. It's insane
Yeah,
to look at.
and it's not like that people don't. There are a lot of people who want to do stuff outside, but
Yeah.
they just don't know how to start.
I think people in engineering college they get very comfortable.
Comfort, exactly. That's
They
just
get
the rule of
so
life,
comfortable.
not just college, life.
That's yeah, fair enough. They don't want to venture out of that zone, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
blame them. But when you do, it's very rewarding. I feel.
It is.
It's
It is.
insane.
And it's the best time is to do it in college or just out of college.
Dude, seriously, you can
That's
mess
true.
up in college, and that's
Yeah.
fine, completely
It's
fine.
fine. It's fine. You're
I
gonna.
know.
Like every 6 months you get a new triad.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, जो भी.
Correct.
You're
It's
gonna.
great. It's great. I just wanna use this platform to mention कि if anybody is building a platform or a software or anything related to gaming in India, hit me up. I'd love to like help you out.
Of course.
I thought he was gonna ask something important. He's
You
just
mad
plugging
or
it-
you mad or
plugging खुद का stuff in it.
you mad or
He
the
has never
podcast is
plugged unengineered का stuff anywhere, but he
Huh.
plug his stuff here all the time.
He
Like,
does
I remember
that.
the first or second podcast, he was plugging his own
That's
podcast.
yeah. That's what all good entrepreneurs do, pata hai. Shamelessly sell that.
Anybody building a gaming product, hit me up, man. I'll love to
And
help.
and if you have an open source product or an
Wow.
idea, please please hit me up.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Let's go. Good one, boy. Take
If
all
you're
that.
Awesome.
writing video editing projects that you might need and animation projects, just hit me up or Vedas or Sanjay.
On that very light note, I'm gonna end this episode. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time. You can follow Akhil at all the links in the description below. But Akhil, where are your most frequent hauntings online?
it's mostly gonna be Instagram and Twitter. So you
That's
can
great.
check me out at the Absolver
We'll link
on
that below.
Instagram and Twitter. Yeah.
Yep. All the links are in the description. I'm saying this for the nth time. I should say that at the beginning of the podcast, but whatever. You can check out the audio versions on all the other platforms that serve audio content. And you can follow me on Instagram and Advait. You can follow the Unengineered Podcast media and the app development pages. We put up so much content. It's insane how many clips I'm scheduling every day. So follow and We'll see you next week with another very cool guest, hopefully. And until then,
Okay.
don't forget to get
Yeah.
on engineering. Bye.
Okay.
Had fun, guys.
Yes, let's go.